The village of Zimkitha was a place of beauty and wonder, nestled between rolling green hills and a river that shimmered under the golden sun. The people of the village were hard-working and kind, living in harmony with nature and following the traditions passed down by their ancestors. Among them was Baba Themba, a humble farmer known for his generous heart, and his wife, Mama Akili, a woman of warmth and wisdom. They had a simple but happy life, yet there was one sorrow that clouded their days. They had no child of their own. For years, Baba Themba and Mama Akili prayed to the ancestors, visited healers, and made offerings at the sacred river, hoping for a child. Their love was strong, but the emptiness in their home was undeniable. Then, one fateful night, under the glow of a full moon, Mama Akili had a dream. In it, a woman dressed in white, with eyes like the stars, placed a baby in her arms and whispered, "This child is a gift, but all gifts come with a price." Not long after, Mama Akili discovered she was pregnant. The news spread through the village, and joy filled their home. But as her belly grew, strange things began to happen. Birds gathered on their rooftop every morning, singing in melodies that no one had heard before. The crops in their field flourished beyond expectation, even when the rains were scarce. And sometimes, when Mama Akili sat beneath the old baobab tree, she swore she could hear whispers in the wind, speaking in a language she could not understand. When the time came, the birth was unlike any other. A soft, glowing light filled their small hut as Mama Akili brought her daughter into the world. The child did not cry, but opened her eyes wide, staring at Baba Themba and Mama Akili with an expression too knowing for a newborn. Nana Kwesi, the village elder, arrived soon after, summoned by the midwives who sensed something extraordinary. The old woman took one look at the child and gasped, her weathered hands trembling as she reached out to touch the baby's forehead. "This child carries a blessing and a curse," she whispered, her voice heavy with wisdom. "She will never age past her youth." A hush fell over the room. Baba Themba held his daughter close, feeling both joy and fear. He named her Zola, meaning peace, believing that she would bring harmony to their lives. But even as he smiled, he could not shake the weight of Nana Kwesi's words. What did it mean for a child to never age? Would she always remain the same? Would she outlive them all? Despite the elder's warning, Baba Themba and Mama Akili loved Zola with all their hearts. She grew up to be a child of extraordinary grace, kind to everyone she met, and wise beyond her years. Yet, as time passed, a deep sadness settled over their home. Not long after Zola's birth, Mama Akili fell ill. No medicine, no prayer, and no healer could save her. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, she held Zola's tiny hand and whispered, "You are special, my love. Never forget that." With those final words, she closed her eyes and joined the ancestors. Grief weighed heavily on Baba Themba, but he knew he had to be strong for Zola. He raised her with love and care, teaching her the ways of the land, the importance of kindness, and the wisdom of the ancestors. Zola grew, but something strange happened. While other children changed, growing taller and older, Zola remained the same. Her face, her body, even her voice, nothing about her seemed to change as the years passed. At first, the villagers found it fascinating. They marveled at her beauty, whispering about how she was a gift from the gods. But admiration slowly turned into unease. Some began to watch her with wary eyes, wondering if she was truly human. Others speculated that she had been touched by the spirits in a way that could not be understood. Life continued in this delicate balance until one day, Baba Themba made a decision that would change everything. He remarried, hoping to bring warmth back into his home. His new wife, Abeni, arrived with her daughter, Tando, and at first, everything seemed peaceful. But beneath Abeni's kind smile was something darker, a jealousy that would soon grow into something dangerous. The joy of Zola's birth was soon overshadowed by sorrow. Mama Akili, who had longed for a child for so many years, fell ill not long after giving birth. At first, it seemed like exhaustion from labor, but as days passed, her strength faded. Baba Themba did everything he could. He called the village healer, made offerings to the ancestors, and sat by her side every night, whispering words of love and encouragement. But nothing could stop the inevitable. One evening, as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and red, Mama Akili held her newborn daughter close. Her voice was weak, but filled with love as she whispered, "You are special, my child. Never forget that." A single tear rolled down her cheek, and with one final breath, she was gone. The hut fell into silence. broken only by the distant sounds of the wind rustling through the trees. Baba Themba felt his heart shatter. The woman he had loved with all his soul was gone, leaving him alone with their daughter. The pain was unbearable, but as he looked down at the tiny baby in his arms, he knew he had to be strong. He named her Zola, meaning peace, believing that she would bring light into his life even in the midst of sorrow. Despite growing up without a mother, Zola was never short of love. Baba Themba cared for her with all his heart, raising her to be kind, humble, and wise. She was unlike any other child in the village, graceful, intelligent, and with an aura of mystery that surrounded her. As the years passed, her beauty only grew, untouched by time. Her skin remained flawless, her eyes bright, her face unchanged, as if the hands of the clock did not move for her. People in the village adored her at first. They admired her charm and kindness, and many saw her as a gift from the ancestors. But as time went on, whispers began to spread. While other children grew taller and changed with age, Zola remained the same. Some villagers started to look at her with curiosity, while others with unease. Baba Themba, however, refused to let fear take root in his heart. To him, Zola was simply his beloved daughter, a blessing given to him after years of waiting. But the world does not always embrace what it does not understand, and soon Zola's unchanging beauty would become a source of both wonder and danger. As the years passed, Baba Themba remained devoted to raising Zola. He did everything a mother and father would do. He braided her hair, cooked her meals, and taught her about the ways of the land. But as kind and loving as he was, he could not replace the warmth of a mother. The village elders often told him, "A child needs a woman's guidance." Eventually, he decided to remarry, hoping to bring a motherly presence into Zola's life. Abeni arrived in Zimkitha with her daughter Tando, and at first she seemed like a blessing. She was soft-spoken, always smiling, and appeared to care deeply for Baba Themba and Zola. She brought warmth back into the home, cooking delicious meals and making sure everything was in order. The villagers praised Baba Themba for choosing a good woman, and for a time, it seemed like the family was complete. At first, Abeni treated Zola well. She would braid her hair and speak to her in gentle tones. Tando, too, seemed friendly, though she kept her distance, observing Zola with quiet curiosity. But as the months passed, a shadow of jealousy began to creep into Abeni's heart. No matter how much time went by, Zola never changed. While other girls in the village grew into young women, Zola remained exactly the same. Her skin smooth, her face youthful, her beauty untouched by time. The villagers often whispered about her, some in awe, others in suspicion. But one thing was clear: wherever Zola went, heads turned. People admired her, spoke kindly of her, and treated her as if she were something special. Abeni couldn't stand it. How could a girl who had no mother, a girl who should have been pitied, be treated like royalty? Worse still, Abeni's own daughter, Tando, was growing into a young woman, yet she would never receive the same attention. Tando had to work hard to maintain her beauty, oiling her skin, braiding her hair perfectly, and wearing the finest beads she could find. But Zola did nothing, yet she remained flawless. Slowly, Abeni's kindness faded. She no longer smiled as often, and her gentle words became sharp. She found excuses to keep Zola busy with chores, making her scrub the floors and fetch water from the river while Tando rested. When Baba Themba wasn't around, Abeni would sigh dramatically and say, "Beauty means nothing if a girl does not know hard work." Tando too began to resent Zola. At first she was only curious, wondering how it was possible for a person to never age. But curiosity soon turned into envy. She would stare at her own reflection, noticing the changes in her face, how her features sharpened, how lines formed when she frowned. But Zola never changed. It was as if time had forgotten her. Tando tried to hide her jealousy, but it grew stronger each day. She watched how people admired Zola, how young men in the village stole glances at her, even though they knew something about her was unnatural. Tando hated it. She wanted to be the one they looked at, the one people admired. And so, she started to mirror her mother's attitude, mocking Zola when she could, making her life harder in small, petty ways. Zola, unaware of the storm growing around her, continued to be her kind and gentle self. She did not complain about the extra chores or the whispered insults. She smiled through it all, believing that love and kindness could soften even the hardest hearts. But she did not know that some hearts, once poisoned by envy, could never be healed. Years passed, and life in Zimkitha continued as usual. Tando blossomed into a young woman, her features maturing with age. Her body changed, her voice deepened slightly, and fine lines began to show when she laughed or frowned. The village girls around her also changed, becoming women ready for marriage, their appearances shifting as time carried them forward. But Zola remained untouched by it all. She still looked exactly as she had years ago, her skin smooth, her face youthful, and her body unchanged. Her beauty was timeless, but instead of admiration, it began to spark unease. At first, people ignored it, thinking that perhaps it was just luck, a blessing from the ancestors. But as more time passed, and she remained frozen in her youthful state, whispers began to spread through the village. "How is it that Zola never ages?" some would murmur as she passed by. "I remember when she was just a girl, but she still looks the same," another would say in hushed tones. Some villagers believed she was a spirit, an otherworldly being walking among them. Others were convinced she was practicing dark magic, using forbidden rituals to keep herself young. Mothers pulled their children closer when she walked by, while old women shook their heads and muttered prayers. Even those who once admired her beauty now watched her with wary eyes. Abeni noticed the shift in the villagers' behavior, and though she had always envied Zola, now that envy twisted into something deeper, fear. What if Zola was truly unnatural? What if she was using witchcraft to keep herself young? The thought sent shivers down Abeni's spine. At first, she tried to brush it off, but the more she watched Zola, the more suspicious she became. The girl never used special herbs or oils like other young women. She never followed the beauty rituals that kept skin soft and youthful. She never seemed tired or weak, no matter how much work she did. It was as if she was untouched by the struggles of ordinary life. Determined to uncover the truth, Abeni started watching Zola more closely. She pretended to be kind again, asking Zola to help her with chores so she could observe her up close. At night, she stayed awake longer than usual, peeking into Zola's room to see if she performed any strange rituals. She searched through Zola's belongings when she wasn't looking, hoping to find charms or secret potions. But no matter how hard Abeni searched, she found nothing. Zola's life was simple. She ate the same food as everyone else, worked just as hard, and carried herself with the same quiet kindness she always had. There was no magic, no hidden secrets, and yet, the truth could not be denied. Zola was not aging, and Abeni was convinced that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Abeni's jealousy burned inside her like a fire that refused to die. No matter how hard she tried to ignore it, she couldn't stand the sight of Zola, her smooth, unchanging skin, her youthful beauty, the way people whispered about her in both fear and admiration. It wasn't natural, it wasn't right, and the more Abeni thought about it, the more she convinced herself that Zola was not an ordinary girl. At first, she kept her suspicions to herself, watching and waiting for proof. But when she found nothing, she decided to take matters into her own hands. If she couldn't find proof, she would make people believe her version of the truth. Slowly, she started whispering in the ears of the villagers. "I have lived with that girl for years," she would say with a concerned look. "She never changes. Isn't that strange?" She told mothers to keep their children away from Zola. She told young men that Zola was cursed and that marrying her would bring misfortune. She even went to the village elders and spoke in a hushed, fearful voice. "I fear for my family," she said, wiping fake tears from her eyes. "What if she is a spirit? What if she brings bad luck upon us all?" At first, some villagers brushed off Abeni's words, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. As the whispers grew, more people began to look at Zola with suspicion. Some avoided her, others lowered their voices when she walked by. The once admired girl was slowly becoming an outcast. But Abeni wasn't done. She needed to get rid of Zola for good. One evening, after the sun had set and the sky was a deep shade of blue, Abeni turned to Baba Themba with a grave expression. "My husband," she said softly, pretending to be full of worry. "I fear for our family. Zola is not normal. People are talking. They say she is cursed." Baba Themba frowned. "Enough of this, Abeni. Zola is my daughter. She has done nothing wrong." "But think about it," Abeni pressed on. "Why does she not age? Why do people fear her? If we do not act, something bad might happen." Baba Themba shook his head. "Zola is a gift, not a curse. I will not send her away." His words filled Abeni with rage. How could he still defend Zola? How could he not see the danger? If Baba Themba refused to do what needed to be done, Then Abeni would take matters into her own hands. That night, as the rest of the household slept, Abeni sat in the darkness, her mind racing. If Zola would not leave on her own, then she would have to make sure she never came back. And so, she began to plan Zola's destruction. Abeni had made up her mind. Zola had to go. She had tried spreading rumors, turning the villagers against her, and even convincing Baba Themba to send her away, but nothing had worked. Now, there was only one thing left to do. If Zola was truly unnatural, then Abeni would put an end to her with her own hands. One evening, while everyone was busy with their usual tasks, Abeni slipped away to prepare a special meal. She reached into the folds of her wrapper and pulled out a small pouch filled with a deadly powder. It was something she had gotten from an old woman who lived deep in the forest, a woman known for making powerful poisons. The woman had warned Abeni, "One pinch is enough to stop the heart." Abeni had nodded, gripping the pouch tightly. Now, as she stirred the steaming pot of stew over the fire, she carefully sprinkled the poison inside, watching as it dissolved into the thick red sauce. She made sure to mix it well, ensuring that every bite would carry death. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she pushed away any fear. She told herself it was the right thing to do. That evening, the family sat together for dinner, as they always did. Baba Themba, tired from a long day, ate slowly, while Tando picked at her food, barely paying attention. Zola, always full of life, smiled as she took her first spoonful of the poisoned stew. Abeni watched her closely, holding her breath. Zola swallowed the food, took another bite, and then another. She hummed in satisfaction, licking her fingers. "This is delicious, Mama Abeni," she said kindly. "You have outdone yourself today." Abeni felt her hands go cold. She watched in disbelief as Zola continued eating, her face glowing with happiness, her body full of energy. There was no sign of pain, no sudden gasp for air, no struggle. The poison had done nothing. Abeni's stomach twisted. She had been so sure, that Zola would fall lifeless before her. But now, as she stared at the girl, a terrifying realization struck her. Zola was not an ordinary girl. She could not be killed. Abeni could no longer sleep at night. No matter how hard she tried, she could not push away the fear growing inside her. Zola had eaten the poisoned meal and remained completely unharmed. It was impossible. It was unnatural. Abeni had always suspected that there was something strange about the girl, but now she was certain. Zola was no ordinary human. Desperate for answers, Abeni decided to visit the only person who might know the truth, the village elder, Nana Kwezi. The old woman was known for her wisdom and connection to the spirits. If anyone could explain Zola's secret, it was her. Early one morning, before the sun had fully risen, Abeni made her way to Nana Kwezi's hut. The path was quiet, and a cool mist hung in the air. Her heart pounded as she reached the elder's doorstep. She knocked urgently, and after a few moments, the door creaked open. Nana Kwezi stood before her, wrapped in a simple cloth, her silver hair falling over her shoulders. Her wise old eyes studied Abeni carefully, as if she already knew why she had come. Without a word, she stepped aside and let Abeni in. Abeni wasted no time. "Nana Kwezi, I need to know the truth about Zola," she said, her voice shaking. "She does not age. She cannot be harmed. What is she?" The elder sighed deeply and walked over to a small fire in the center of the hut. She sat down, motioning for Abeni to do the same. She picked up a handful of dried herbs and tossed them into the flames. A sweet, smoky scent filled the air, and the fire flickered as if responding to her presence. "The child you speak of is not cursed," Nana Kwezi said finally. "She is blessed." Abeni frowned. "Blessed? How?" The elder's gaze was steady. "Zola was chosen by the ancestors before she was even born. She carries their gift, eternal youth. She will never grow old, never weaken, and never die by human hands." Abeni's breath caught in her throat. The words sent shivers down her spine. "But why?" she whispered. "Because she has a great purpose," Nana Kwezi continued. "She is meant to bring greatness to this land. One day, she will guide our people to a brighter future." Abeni's mind spun. A great destiny, a power given by the ancestors. She had always envied Zola's beauty, but now she saw something even more valuable: immortality. If Zola truly carried this blessing, then she could live forever, untouched by time, never fearing sickness or death. A new thought crept into Abeni's mind, one darker than all the jealousy she had ever felt. What if that power could be taken? What if she, Abeni, could claim the ancestors' gift for herself? Her fingers tightened around the folds of her wrapper as she lowered her voice. "Nana Kwezi, Is there a way to take such a blessing from someone else? The elder's eyes darkened, and the flames in the fire crackled sharply. You must not speak such words, she warned. The ancestors choose whom they bless. If you try to take what is not meant for you, you will only bring ruin upon yourself. But Abeni was no longer listening. A hunger had awoken inside her, stronger than any fear. She had spent years envying Zola, hating the girl for her beauty and kindness. But now, she saw her not as a rival, but as an opportunity. She left Nanakwezi's hut with only one thought in her mind. She would find a way to steal Zola's gift, no matter what it took. Abeni knew she had to act quickly. Now that she understood Zola's secret, she couldn't let the girl continue living in peace. If she couldn't steal Zola's power, then she had to get rid of her once and for all. But after the failed poisoning attempt, Abeni realized that harming Zola directly was impossible. Instead, she needed a different plan, one that would make sure Zola was gone forever. One evening, as the sky darkened and the crickets began their nightly song, Abeni called Zola and Tando to her side. She put on her warmest smile, the kind she used when she wanted people to trust her. My daughters, she said gently, I have been thinking. The villagers have been whispering about Zola, and I do not want any harm to come to our family. I believe we must perform a special cleansing ritual to remove any bad luck that may be surrounding us. Zola, always kind-hearted and respectful, nodded without suspicion. If it will bring peace to our home, I will do it. Tando hesitated. But when she saw her mother's sharp look, she swallowed her doubt and agreed. Yes, Mama, we will do as you say. Abeni smiled in satisfaction. Good, we must go deep into the forest, where the spirits are strongest. There we will offer prayers and cleanse Zola of any misfortune. The three of them set out under the cover of night. The forest was thick and silent, the trees towering above them like shadowy giants. The further they walked, the darker it became, the light of the moon barely breaking through the dense canopy. Zola walked ahead, trusting her stepmother's words, while Abeni and Tando exchanged secret glances behind her back. After what felt like hours, they reached a small clearing. Abeni stopped and placed a hand on Zola's shoulder. This is the place, she said. We must begin the ritual. She instructed Zola to kneel and close her eyes. Stay still, my child, Abeni whispered. We will call upon the spirits now. Zola obeyed, bowing her head in prayer. She did not see the silent signal Abeni gave to Tando. Without a word, the two of them stepped back, their feet moving swiftly but quietly. They turned and ran through the trees, past the thick bushes. Their breath came fast and heavy, but they did not stop. They had to leave before Zola realized what was happening. The deeper into the forest Zola remained, the harder it would be for her to find her way back. With any luck, she would be lost forever, swallowed by the endless darkness of the woods. When they finally reached the edge of the forest, Abeni turned to Tando, her eyes gleaming with victory. She is gone, she whispered. At last we are free of her. But Abeni had underestimated Zola. Though she was alone in the depths of the forest, Zola did not feel afraid. As she slowly opened her eyes and looked around, she realized something was wrong. The night was too quiet. The presence of Abeni and Tando had disappeared. She stood up, turning in all directions. Mama Abeni, she called. Tando, no answer. The truth settled in her heart like a stone. They had left her. They had tricked her. For a moment, sadness washed over her. But it did not last. A gentle breeze brushed against her skin, carrying a whisper only she could hear. The rustling leaves seemed to form words, and suddenly, she understood. The ancestors were guiding her. She closed her eyes again, this time listening carefully. A warm presence surrounded her, a force unseen but powerful. When she opened her eyes, she found a narrow path before her, one she had not noticed before. Trusting the spirits, she followed it, walking with steady steps. Hours later, just as the first light of dawn touched the village, Zola stepped out of the forest, unharmed and stronger than ever. When Abeni saw her return, her face turned pale with shock. Zola was back, and she was not alone. The spirits of the ancestors had protected her, proving once again that she was destined for something greater. And Abeni knew, deep in her heart, that she could never defeat a child chosen by the gods. Word spread quickly through the village of Zimkitha. At first, the whispers were soft, cautious, but soon they grew louder, filled with shock and anger. The villagers had always known Abeni to be strict, but never had they imagined the depths of her cruelty. Now, the truth was out. She had tried to poison Zola, spread lies about her, and even abandoned her in the dark forest, hoping she would never return. The elders of the village, led by Nanakwesi, gathered at the central meeting place. The air was heavy with tension as Baba Themba, his face lined with sorrow and fury, stood before them. "I was blind," he admitted, his voice shaking. "I allowed this woman into my home, trusted her with my daughter, and she repaid me with betrayal." Abeni stood in the middle of the crowd, her once proud posture now hunched with fear. She looked around desperately, but no one came to her defense. Even the women she used to gossip with avoided her gaze. The men she had once charmed shook their heads in disappointment. Nanakwesi's voice was firm as she spoke. "Abeni, you have committed great evil. You allowed jealousy to poison your heart. You have disrespected the ancestors and betrayed the trust of this village. Such wickedness cannot go unpunished." Abeni fell to her knees. "Please, I was only trying to protect my daughter. I was afraid of Zola. Afraid of what she is." A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Nanakwesi remained unmoved. "The ancestors do not punish the innocent," she said. "Zola was never a threat to you, yet you sought to destroy her. You do not belong in Zimkitha anymore." At those words, Abeni gasped. To be banished was the worst punishment of all. It meant losing everything, her home, her people, her very identity. "Please have mercy," she cried, looking around desperately. But the villagers had already turned away, their decision final. Tando, standing nearby, trembled as she watched her mother's downfall. Tears streamed down her face as she ran to Zola, falling at her feet. "I was wrong," she sobbed. "I let my mother's hatred blind me. Please forgive me, Zola. I don't want to end up like her." Zola looked down at Tando, her face calm and unreadable. She had suffered under Abeni's cruelty for years, and she had seen Tando join in her mother's schemes. But she also saw the fear in her eyes, the fear of becoming a woman filled with jealousy and bitterness. After a long silence, Zola finally spoke. "The heart that holds envy will never find peace," she said softly. "You must learn to let go of jealousy, Tando, or it will destroy you." Tando nodded quickly, her tears falling to the earth. She knew that Zola had given her a second chance, but it was up to her to prove she had truly changed. As the sun began to set, Abeni was led away from the village, her shoulders slumped, her eyes hollow. She had spent years trying to take everything from Zola, but in the end, she had lost everything herself. And so, the people of Zimkitha turned the page on Abeni's wickedness, knowing that the ancestors had delivered their justice. As time passed, Zola's name became known far beyond the borders of Zimkitha. People spoke of her kindness, her wisdom, and the strange but wonderful gift she carried, the gift of eternal youth. While those around her grew older, Zola remained the same, untouched by time. But she did not use her gift for vanity or selfishness. Instead, she dedicated her life to helping others. She walked through the village, offering food to the hungry and shelter to the homeless. When strangers lost their way in the vast forests surrounding Zimkitha, Zola guided them home. Children sat at her feet, listening to the stories she told. Stories of love, patience, and the dangers of envy. To the sick, she brought healing herbs, and to the sorrowful, she offered words of comfort. Because of her, peace settled over Zimkitha, and the village prospered like never before. People began to call her the guardian of Zimkitha. They believed she had been blessed by the ancestors to watch over them, and in return, they honored her with love and respect. Even those who had once whispered against her now came to seek her wisdom. And Zola, ever kind, never turned anyone away. Far away from the village, Abeni wandered the land, lost and alone. The beauty she had once been so proud of faded quickly, and the years seemed to weigh heavily upon her. Her hair turned grey, her skin wrinkled, and her once bright eyes grew dull with misery. She had spent so much time trying to destroy Zola, believing the girl's youth was unnatural, yet now, she was the one suffering an unnatural fate. She aged faster than normal, as if the ancestors themselves had cursed her for her wickedness. No village would take her in. Wherever she went, people turned her away, sensing the darkness in her heart. She had once lived in a grand home, surrounded by people, but now she had nothing. Cold nights and lonely days became her new reality. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Abeni found herself near a small river. Her reflection in the water shocked her. She barely recognized the old woman staring back. The sight brought tears to her eyes. "This is the fate I wished upon Zola," she whispered to herself. and now it has come for me instead. But unlike Abeni, Zola lived on, untouched by time, surrounded by love and admiration. She had proven that true power did not come from youth or beauty, but from kindness, patience, and a heart free of envy. And so, her legend continued, a story told from generation to generation, the tale of the girl who never aged, but whose spirit grew stronger with every passing year. As the years passed, Zola's story became more than just a memory. It became a lesson that parents told their children and elders shared around the fire at night. The people of Zimkitha never forgot the girl who never aged, the one who had suffered cruelty but still chose kindness. They spoke of how she had been wronged by her stepmother, Abeni, and how fate had turned against the wicked woman in the end. The village elders would gather the young ones and tell them, "Beware of envy, for it can destroy even the strongest heart." Abeni wanted to take what was never meant to be hers, and for that she lost everything. Zola, on the other hand, never sought revenge. She forgave, she healed, and she became greater than anyone could have imagined. Travelers who passed through Zimkitha would hear the tale and carry it with them, spreading it to other lands. Soon, even those who had never set foot in the village knew the story of the girl who never aged. Some came searching for her, hoping to see if the legend was true. Some wanted to ask for her wisdom, while others simply wanted to witness a miracle. But no matter how many years passed, the story always remained the same. The villagers often repeated one warning: never harm the one blessed by the ancestors, for fate will always turn against the wicked. This saying became a proverb, a reminder that the ancestors watched over the righteous, and that those who acted with greed and jealousy would one day face the consequences of their actions. And so, Zola's name lived on, not just as a legend, but as a symbol of goodness and the power of destiny. While the world changed, her story never faded, and the lesson remained in the hearts of those who heard it.